I stood in the foyer of the house I'd poured my soul into for 35 years, clutching a single suitcase. The chandelier above, the one I'd chosen with such care, glittered mockingly as Richard's voice echoed from the living room. "Emma, you need to leave. Samantha's moving in tomorrow." His words sliced through me, cold and final, like a guillotine. At 58, after decades of marriage, I was being erased from my own life. But what he didn't know was that I'd been quietly preparing for a moment like this. 3 days later, I'd cash out everything, every asset, every secret I'd kept and leave them with nothing but their arrogance. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Emma Stone, and this is the story of how I lost my home, my husband, and my dignity, only to take it all back in a way no one saw coming. The house was my masterpiece. Every detail, the mahogany staircase, the rose garden I tended daily, the kitchen where I'd baked birthday cakes for Peter and Laura was mine. Richard made the money, sure, but I made the home. We'd built a life together, or so I thought. Richard, 60 now, was still the charming businessman who could sell ice to a glacier. His tailored suits and easy smile hid a selfishness I'd ignored for too long. I loved him fiercely once, back when we were young, scraping by in a tiny apartment, dreaming of this very house. But somewhere along the way, his ambition outgrew me. It started with late nights at the office. "Work's hectic, Em," he'd say, waving off my concerns. I believed him because I wanted to. Then I noticed the perfume on his shirts, the way his phone buzzed at odd hours. Samantha, his 2-year-old secretary, was no secret. She was all sharp heels and sharper ambition, with a smile that promised everything and meant nothing. I'd met her at the company Christmas party, her eyes lingering on Richard a little too long. I should have known then, but love makes you blind. The betrayal wasn't just Richard's. Our son, Peter, 35, stood by his father. "Dad's just moving on, Mom. You should too." His words stung worse than Richard's. Peter, my firstborn, who had rocked through fevers and coached through heartbreak, chose his father's side. Laura, my 3-year-old daughter, was different. She called me daily, her voice trembling with rage. "Mom, how could he do this? You don't deserve it." She was my anchor, but even she couldn't stop the storm. That morning, Richard handed me divorce papers over breakfast, as casually as passing the salt. "It's over, Emma. You're too old for this life now. Samantha fits better." His eyes didn't even meet mine. I sat there, coffee going cold, staring at the man I'd loved since I was 23. I didn't scream or cry. I just nodded. Because what else could I do? Had already moved my clothes to the guest room, like I was a tenant being evicted. Mrs. Patel, our neighbor, saw it all. She was 55, sharp-eyed, and always watching from her porch. "Emma, you okay?" she asked as I dragged my suitcase to the car. I forced a smile. "It'll be fine, Mrs. Patel." But I wasn't. Not yet. Inside, I was breaking every memory of this house, every laugh, every fight, crumbling like ash. I drove to Jane's house, my best friend since college. Jane, 59, with her wild laugh and fierce loyalty, opened her door and pulled me into a hug. "That bastard," she muttered. "Well, fix this, Em. You're not done." Jane's words sparked something in me. I wasn't done. I'd spent years managing Richard's investments, signing papers he barely read, building a safety net he didn't know existed. I'd been the quiet one, the dutiful wife, but I wasn't powerless. That night, I called Mr. Thompson, my financial advisor. "Emma, you've got more control than you think," he said, his voice steady. "Those accounts, the property's there in your name." Richard never checked the fine print. I hung up, my heart pounding. The game wasn't over. But first, I had to face the wreckage. The next day, I got a call from Laura. "Mom, you won't believe this. Samantha's already redecorating the house. She threw out your rose bushes." My rose bushes, the ones I'd planted when Peter was born, tended through every season of my life. I closed my eyes, picturing Samantha's smug smile as she ripped out my roots. I wanted to scream, to storm back and take everything. But I didn't. Not yet. I had a plan, and it started with a visit to Mr. Harlan, my lawyer. Mr. Harlan, 65, was a man who could make a shark flinch. "Emma," he said, leaning back in his chair, "Richard's made a mistake. A big one. You own more than he thinks." He slid a folder across his desk, filled with documents I'd signed over the years' deeds, trusts, accounts. Richard had been too busy chasing Samantha to notice. I felt a flicker of hope, sharp and dangerous. This wasn't just about money. It was about justice. As I left Harlan's office, my phone buzzed. It was Peter. "Mom, Dad wants you to sign some papers. It's for the house." His voice was clipped, like he was doing a chore. I gripped the phone, my resolve hardening. Richard thought he could erase me, but had forgotten who I was. I'd built this life, and I'd tear it down before I let him and Samantha enjoy it. I stood in Jane's guest room, staring at the papers Peter had mentioned, delivered by courier like I was some stranger. Richard's signature sprawled across the top, bold and careless, demanding I sign over the house or house to him and Samantha. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a rage I hadn't felt in years. I could still hear Laura's voice from yesterday, cracking as she described Samantha tossing my rose bushes into a dumpster. She laughed. "Mom," Laura had said, like it was nothing. I closed my eyes, picturing those roses' blooms I'd nurtured through Peter's first steps. Laura's prom nights. Every Christmas morning. They were mine, just like this house was mine. And Richard thought he could take it all. Jane burst into the room, her coffee mug in one hand, her phone in the other. You're not signing that garbage, are you?" Her voice was sharp, her eyes blazing with the same fire that had gotten us through college breakups and late-night crises. I shook my head, folding the papers and shoving them into my purse. "No, Jane. I'm not signing anything. Not yet." She grinned, a wicked glint in her eye. "That's my girl. Let's burn their world down." I wanted to laugh, but the weight of betrayal sat heavy on my chest. I'd given Richard everything, 3, 5 years, 2 children, a home that was the envy of our street. And now, at 58, I was supposed to slink away, penniless, while Samantha draped herself in my life like it was a designer coat. I called Laura, needing her voice to ground me. "Mom, Peter's acting weird," she said, her tone urgent. "Has at the house with Dad and Samantha, going through your stuff." I tried to stop them, but Peter said it's Dad's property now. "Mom, what's going on?" My heart sank. Peter, my boy, was helping them erase me. I could picture him, broad-shouldered like his father, carrying boxes of my memories to the curb. I wanted to scream at him, to ask how he could betray me like this, but I didn't. Instead, I told Laura, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got this." But did I? Doubt gnawed at me as I hung up. I needed to move fast. I drove to Mr. Harlan's office, the folder of documents from yesterday tucked under my arm. The city blurred past our small town had grown into a bustling suburb over the years, but today it felt foreign, like I didn't belong. Harlan greeted me with a nod, his gray eyes sharp behind his glasses. "Emma, I've reviewed everything," he said, spreading papers across his desk. "The house, the investment accounts, the offshore trusts you're the primary holder. Richard's name is on them, but you control the strings. He didn't read the fine print when you set these up 20 years ago." I stared at the documents, my signature neat and deliberate on every page. Back then, Richard had been too busy building his empire to care about the details. I'd handled the finances, the legal work, the safety nets, while he chased deals and, apparently, Samantha. "What can I do with this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Harlan leaned forward, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "You can cash out, Emma, liquidate everything, the house, the accounts, the properties he doesn't even know about. You can leave him with nothing but the shirt on his back." The idea hit me like a wave. Cash out, sell it all. The house we'd built, the investments I'd grown, the future he thought was his. I could take it away, just as had taken my dignity. But it wasn't just about Richard. Samantha's smug face flashed in my mind, her laughter as she tore out my roses, and Peter Meone's son siding with them. Could I do this to him too? I pushed the thought away. I had to protect myself first. That afternoon, I met Mr. Thompson, my financial advisor, at a quiet cafe. He was 50, all business in his crisp suit, but his eyes softened when he saw me. "Emma, I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry." I waved it off. "I don't need pity, Tom. I need action. Can you liquidate the accounts without Richard knowing?" He raised an eyebrow, flipping through the portfolio Id handed him. "You own 70% of the assets outright. The rest is tied up in trusts you control. I can start the process today, but it'll take a few days to move the funds discreetly." "Are you sure?" Was I sure? I thought of Richard's cold dismissal, Samantha's laughter, Peter's betrayal. "I'm sure," I said, my voice like steel. Thompson nodded. "I'll get it done. You'll have access to the funds by next week. Millions, Emma. More than enough to start over. Millions." The word felt unreal, but it was real. I'd been the one to invest wisely, to squirrel away profits while Richard spent on cars and vacations. Now, that caution was my weapon. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed. It was Mrs. Patel, her voice low and urgent. "Emma, you need to see this. Samantha's throwing a party at your house tonight. She's invited half the town, acting like she owns the place." My stomach twisted. A party. In my home. I could imagine her strutting through my living room, toasting her victory with my crystal glasses. I wanted to drive over, to scream, to tear it all down. But I didn't. I thanked Mrs. Patel and hung up, my plan taking shape. Let them celebrate. Let them think they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. That night, I sat with Jane, sipping tea in her cozy kitchen. You're scaring me," she said, half joking. "You've got that look like you're about to start a war." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Not a war, Jane. A reckoning." I was done being the quiet wife, the forgiving mother. Richard and Samantha thought they could bury me, but they'd forgotten one thing. It built this empire, and I knew exactly how to dismantle it. The days blurred into a haze of paperwork and quiet fury. I spent mornings at Jane's kitchen table, poring over statements with Mr. Thompson on the phone, his voice a steady anchor in the chaos. "Emma, the transfers are starting," he'd say. "The offshore account is moving $2 million so far. Richard won't notice until it's too late." I nodded to myself, tracing numbers on the page that represented years of my life, my sacrifices. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Richard's face, that smug dismissal as he handed me the divorce papers. "You're too old for this life now," his words echoed, a knife twisting deeper with each repetition. Laura came over that evening, her eyes red from crying. She was 33, but in that moment, she looked like my little girl again, the one who'd cling to me during thunderstorms. "Mom, I went to the house today," she whispered, collapsing onto Jane's couch. "Samantha's changed everything. Your curtains are gone, the photos of us kids trashed. And Peter, he's helping her pick out new furniture." My chest tightened. Peter, my son, who I'd carried for 9 months, who I'd driven to soccer practices at dawn, now complicit in this erasure. "Why, Laura?" I asked, my voice breaking for the first time in days. "Why would he do this?" Laura shook her head, tears spilling. "He's always idolized Dad, Mom. Thinks this is just business. But I heard him arguing with Samantha. She called you that old hag and he didn't defend you." The words hit like a slap. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind racing. I wanted to call Peter, to scream until he understood the pain he'd caused. But Jane put a hand on my arm. "Not now, Em. Save your energy. They're digging their own grave." She was right, but the hurt festered, a dark cloud over my resolve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest bed, memories flooding me like a dam breaking. Richard and I on our wedding day, young and foolish, promising forever in a tiny chapel. The birth of Peter. Richard holding my hand through 18 hours of labor, tears in his eyes. Laura's first steps in that house. Toddling across the living room floor, I'd polished myself. We'd had good year's vacations in Europe, anniversaries with candlelit dinners. But cracks had formed long ago. Richard's affairs weren't new. I'd suspected others, forgiven in silence to keep the family whole. Samantha was just the boldest, the one who convinced him to blow it all up. The next morning, Mrs. Patel called again, her voice hushed like a spy in a movie. Emma, they're fighting. I heard it from my window. Samantha's yelling about money, says Richard promised her luxury. But bills are piling up. I almost laughed. Of course, Richard's empire was built on credit and charm, but I'd been the one balancing the books. With me gone, things were unraveling. Thank you, Mrs. Patel, I said. Keep watching. She chuckled. Always do, dear. You deserve better. I met Mr. Harlan for lunch at a quiet diner, away from prying eyes. He slid another folder across the table. The divorce filing is public now, Emma. Richard's claiming the house as marital property, but we've got the deeds. It's in your name. Your inheritance from your parents funded the down payment, remember? I did. My folks had left me that money, and I'd used it wisely, protecting it in trusts Richard never touched. File the countersuit, I told him, and start the sale process on the house. Harlan's eyes widened. Selling? That's aggressive. I met his gaze. He took my home, now I'll take his. As I left the diner, my phone rang Richard. My heart pounded as I answered. Emma, where are you? His voice was clipped, impatient. Peter said you haven't signed the papers. We need this done. No, hello. No remorse. Just demands. I'm thinking about it. I lied, my tone even. In the background, I heard Samantha's voice, cooing something about dinner plans. Hurry up, he snapped. Samantha's pregnant. We need space. Pregnant. The word exploded in my mind. A fresh betrayal. After all we'd built, he was starting over without me. I hung up without a word, tears burning my eyes. Pregnant. At 32, she could give him what I couldn't anymore, a new family. A do-over. I drove aimlessly, ending up at the park where Richard and I used to picnic with the kids. Sitting on a bench, I let the sobs come, raw and ugly. 58 years old, discarded like yesterday's news. The pain was physical, a ache in my bones. But beneath it, resilience stirred. I'd raised 2 children, survived miscarriages, buried my parents, all while holding our world together. I wasn't broken. Not yet. Jane found me there hours later, wrapping me in a hug. He doesn't deserve your tears, Em. She wiped my face, her own eyes misty. But that baby, that's a low blow. We walked back to her car, and I told her about the call. Then make him pay, she said fiercely. Cash it all out. Let them start from scratch, like you are. By evening, Mr. Thompson emailed. First tranche transferred. House listing, prepared discreet buyer lined up. I stared at the screen, the numbers blurring through my tears. This was it, the breaking point. No more waiting. Richard thought he could replace me, but he'd learned the hard way. I was irreplaceable. The news of Samantha's pregnancy lingered like a poison, seeping into every thought. I woke the next morning with a heaviness in my chest, the kind that makes breathing a chore. Jane was already up, brewing coffee, her face etched with concern. You look like hell, Em, she said bluntly, sliding a mug my way. I managed a weak smile. Feel like it too. Richard called yesterday Samantha's pregnant. Jane's eyes widened, then narrowed. That's slimy. After everything, you gave him 2 kids. And he does this? She slammed her fist on the counter, rattling the spoons. All the more reason to hit him where it hurts. I nodded, but the pain was raw. A new baby meant a new family, one without me. I'd be the ex-wife, the forgotten footnote in their story. But as I sipped the coffee, anger bubbled up, hot and clarifying. No, I wouldn't fade away. I'd make sure they remembered me. I called Mr. Thompson first thing. Speed it up, I told him. Liquidate faster. I want the house sold by week's end. His voice hesitated. Emma, that's risky. Richard might notice the activity. Let him, I snapped. By then it'll be too late. Laura arrived mid-morning, arms full of takeout from our favorite diner. Comfort food, Mom, she said, setting it down. But her face was pale, shadows under her eyes. Peter called me last night. He's excited about the baby, says it'll be a fresh start for Dad. A fresh start. The words twisted in my gut. Peter, who I'd taught to ride a bike in that driveway, now celebrating my replacement. Did he ask about me? I whispered. Laura shook her head, tears welling. No, he's blind to it all. We ate in silence, the food tasting like ash. Laura reached for my hand. Mom, whatever you're planning, I'm with you. You don't have to do this alone. Her support was a lifeline, pulling me from the abyss. After she left, I drove to the House Me House one last time. I parked across the street, hidden behind Mrs. Patel's hedge. She waved me over, her sari fluttering in the breeze. Emma, come inside. They're out, but I saw Samantha unloading baby catalogs this morning. We sat in her living room, sipping tea, as she described the scene. She's strutting like a queen, redoing the nursery-year-old sewing room. My sewing room where I'd mended Peter's torn jeans and Laura's prom dress. Now, it would cradle their child. The injustice burned. From Mrs. Patel's window, I watched the house, memories assaulting me. Richard proposing on the porch steps, fumbling the ring in nervousness, the kids' laughter echoing through the halls on rainy days. Our 25th anniversary party, where he'd toasted me as his rock. Lies, all of it now. My phone buzzed. Miss Harlan. Countersuit filed, Emma. And the buyer for the house is interested, cash offer, above market. We can close in days. I gripped the phone. Do it. But make sure Richard finds out at the worst moment. That evening, Peter showed up at Jane's unannounced. He stood in the doorway, shifting uncomfortably, his father's eyes staring back at me. Mom, we need to talk. Jane hovered nearby, ready to intervene, but I waved her off. Come in, Peter. We sat in the living room, tension thick as fog. Dad says you're dragging your feet on the papers. Samantha's stressed the pregnancy's high risk. Can't you just sign? His voice was pleading, but laced with accusation. I studied him, this man I'd raised. Peter, do you even see what he's done? Thrown me out like trash for her. He looked away. People change, Mom. Dad's happy now. You should be too. Happy? The word ignited something primal. Happy? After 35 years, he discards me, and you side with him? What about my happiness? My voice rose, cracking. Peter's face hardened. You're being dramatic. It's just a house. Just a house. My home. My heart. I stood, pointing to the door. Get out, Peter. Until you understand betrayal, don't come back. He left without a word, slamming the door. Jane rushed in, hugging me as I crumpled. He's lost, Em. But you'll show him. The next day, Mr. Thompson called with updates. Accounts are draining, stocks sold, bonds cashed. You've got $4 million liquid already, wired to your new account. $4 million. From investments I'd chosen, risks I'd taken while Richard golfed with clients. And the house? I asked. Buyers confirmed. Closing tomorrow. Richard's credit lines are tied to either'll be exposed. I imagined his face when the notices came, panic replacing his smirk. But doubt crept in as I paced Jane's floor. Was I becoming the villain, destroying the home my children grew up in, just for revenge? I called Laura, voice trembling. Am I wrong? She paused. No, Mom. They wrong you first. Take what's yours. Her words steeled me. This wasn't revenge, it was survival. Richard had broken our vows. Now I'd break his illusions. As night fell, Mrs. Patel texted, Party at your house again. Samantha's toasting the baby. I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene laughter in my halls, while I plotted in shadows. Tomorrow the hammer would fall. They thought they had it all, but I held the keys to their downfall. The closing day dawned gray and heavy, mirroring the storm inside me. I sat in Mr. Harlan's office, pen in hand, staring at the final documents for the house sale. The buyer was an Anamusa shell company I'd set up through Thompson to keep Richard in the dark until the ink dried. Emma, once you sign, it's done, Harlan said, his voice grave. The funds transfer immediately. Richard will get the eviction notice by afternoon. I hesitated, my mind flashing to the good times. Richard dancing with me in the kitchen, the kids' graduations in the backyard, but those memories were tainted now, poisoned by betrayal. I signed, the pen scratching like a final goodbye. It's time, I whispered. As I left the office, a weight lifted, but another settled guilt. Was I destroying my children's inheritance? Peter might never forgive me. And Laura, she supported me, but this would change everything. I drove to a nearby cafe, ordering tea I didn't drink, my hands shaking. The phone rang. Laura. Mom, are you okay? You sound distant. I told her about the sale, my voice barely above a whisper. It's sold, sweetheart. By tonight, it'll be over. She gasped. Mom, that's huge. But he's at the house now, helping Dad with renovations. What if he finds out? He will, I said. And he'll have to choose sides for real. The wait was agony. I paced Jane's living room, every tick of the clock amplifying my anxiety. Jane tried to distract me with old photos, reminiscing about our wild youth. Remember that road trip to Vegas? You were fearless then, Em. You're fearless now. I forced a laugh, but inside, doubt clawed. What if Richard fought back? He was charming. Connected, could he turn this around? Thompson called mid-afternoon. Funds are in your account, $6 million from the house alone, plus the investments. You're set, Emma, but Richard's accounts are frozen. Creditors are circling. I closed my eyes, imagining his confusion as cards declined, bills mounted. Mrs. Patel texted updates. Movers here for new furniture. Samantha's directing like a boss. I could see her, belly slightly rounded, ordering workers around my space. The image fueled my resolve, but also a pang of sorrow. She was young, ambitious like I was once. Did she know the pain she caused? Probably not. Richard had painted me as the villain, the nagging wife holding him back. But I wasn't. I'd supported his dreams, sacrificed mine. My art degree gathered dust while I managed the home, the finances, the everything. Evening brought the breaking point. Peter called, his voice frantic. Mom, what the hell? Dad's freaking out, some notice came. Eviction? The house is sold? I heard Richard in the background, yelling at Samantha. Yes, Peter, I said calmly. I sold it. It was mine to sell. Silence stretched. Then explosion. How could you? That's our family home. You're ruining everything because you're bitter? Bitter. The word stung, but I fired back. Bitter? Your father threw me out, Peter. For her, and you helped. This is consequence. He hung up, but not before I heard Samantha's sobs. Laura arrived soon after, hugging me tight. I just left the house, Mom. Chaos. Dad's calling lawyers. Samantha's packing in tears. Peter, he's shell-shocked. She described the scene. Richard pacing, face red, slamming phones. Samantha clutching her belly, accusing him of lies. He promised her stability, Laura said. But now, debts are surfacing, cars repossessed, accounts empty. I nodded, the reality sinking in. I'd done this. Me, the quiet Emma, had orchestrated their downfall. But triumph mixed with heartbreak. That night, alone in bed, tears came unbidden. 58 years, reduced to this vengeance over love. I thought of my parents, who'd taught me strength, and wondered if they'd approve. Jane knocked softly. Can't sleep? She sat beside me, holding my hand. You're resilient, Em. You've survived worse. We talked till dawn. My fears, my regrets, the flicker of hope for a new life. Travel, maybe. Painting again. Rebuilding without Richard's shadow. By morning, resolve hardened. Mr. Harlan confirmed. Sales final. Eviction enforced tomorrow. I felt a surge of power, dark and intoxicating. They thought me weak, but I'd risen from the ashes. The struggle had forged me pain into purpose, betrayal into bravery. Richard and Samantha would learn, you can't break someone who's already rebuilding. Eviction day arrived like a thunderclap, shattering the illusion of their perfect new life. I didn't go to the house. I couldn't bear to watch, but Mrs. Patel kept me updated with a stream of texts. Her play-by-play more vivid than any movie. Sheriff's here, Emma. Richard's arguing, face like a tomato. Samantha's crying, clutching boxes. I sat on Jane's porch, phone in hand, a mix of vindication and sorrow washing over me. This was my doing, my quiet revenge, but it tasted bittersweet. At 58, I'd become the architect of their ruin, and part of me wondered if I'd lost myself in the process. Laura called minutes later, her voice breathless. Mom, it's insane. Dad's yelling at the officers, saying it's a mistake. Peter's trying to calm him, but Samantha, she's hysterical, blaming Dad for everything. I could picture the chaos, movers hauling out their hasty purchases, neighbors gawking from lawns, Richard, always the composed businessman, reduced to begging. "What about the baby?" Laura added softly. "She's screaming about stress harming it." A pang hit me. The child was innocent, a life caught in our wreckage, but Richard had chosen this path, dragging us all down. I closed my eyes, reflecting on the journey that led here. Months ago, I'd been the devoted wife, ignoring the signs, Richard's distant gazes, Samantha's name popping up in conversations. I'd buried my suspicions in routine gardening, volunteering, being the rock for Peter and Laura. But the breaking point came that fateful breakfast, divorce papers slapping the table like a gauntlet. "You're replaceable, Emma," he'd said. Replaceable. After birthing his children, nursing him through illnesses, building his fortune in shadows. No more. Jane joined me on the porch, handing me a glass of wine. "To new beginnings," she toasted, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You've got the money, the freedom. What now?" I sipped, the wine warming me. "Travel, maybe. Europe, like we always talked about. But first, closure." My phone buzzed Richard. I stared at the screen, heart racing. Answer? Ignore? Curiosity won. "Emma, what have you done?" His voice cracked, stripped of arrogance. "We're on the street. Samantha's in hysterics. Fix this. Fix this." As if I owed him. "You fixed it when you threw me out, Richard. Remember? Too old now." Silence, then pleading. Please, for the kids." Peter's devastated the house was his childhood. Using Peter as a shield. I glanced at Jane, who shook her head fiercely. "No, Richard. You made your bed. Sleep in it." I hung up, adrenaline surging. Power shifted. For once, I held the cards, but the emotional toll mounted. That afternoon, Peter showed up at Jane's, disheveled, eyes bloodshot. "Mom," he croaked, stepping inside. Jane retreated, giving us space. He collapsed on the couch, head in hands. "Why? The house... gone." Dad's broke. Samantha's threatening to leave. I sat across from him, studying my Santh boy who'd once drawn me Mother's Day cards, now a man complicit in my pain. "Peter, you chose them. Helped erase me." Tears welled in his eyes. I thought Dad was right. Fresh start. But seeing him now, he's lost without you. His words cracked my armor. I reached out, touching his arm. "I didn't do this to hurt you, Peter. But I had to survive." He nodded, wiping his face. "I get it now." "I'm sorry, Mom." We hugged, sobs, mingling forgiveness budding amid the ruins. Laura arrived soon after, joining us in a tearful huddle. My children, back with me. Even as Richard spiraled, Mr. Harlan called with finality. "All clear, Emma. Assets secured, debts on Richard, you're free." Free, the word echoed, promising horizons. But darkness lingered, the pain of betrayal, the scars of struggle. I'd resiliently clawed back my life, but at what cost? As evening fell, I walked Jane's garden, breathing deep. Hope flickered, a new chapter, painted by my hands. In the aftermath of the eviction, the town buzzed with whispers, but I stayed hidden at Jane's, letting the storm rage without me. Mrs. Patel's updates painted a grim picture. Richard and Samantha holed up in a cheap motel, their luxury cars repossessed, arguments spilling into the parking lot. "He's aged 10 years overnight," she texted. "Samantha's threatening to leave with the baby." I should have felt joy, but instead, a hollow ache settled in. Revenge wasn't the balm I'd imagined. It was a mirror, reflecting my own loneliness. At 58, I'd won the battle, but the war had scarred us all. Laura and Peter came. Together that afternoon, a united front for the first time in months. Peter looked haunted, his usual confidence shattered. "Mom, Dad's a mess," he said, sitting at Jane's table. Creditors calling non-stop, Samantha packing her bags. He admits it no way screwed up. Laura squeezed my hand, her eyes pleading. "They want to talk, Mom." A family meeting. I shook my head, memories flooding. Richard's cold eviction, Samantha's mockery. "Why now? Because they're broke?" Peter winced. "Partly. But Dad's remorseful. says he never appreciated you. Remorseful. The word hung heavy. I dreamed of this Richard begging forgiveness, but now it felt tainted. Jane hovered in the kitchen, eavesdropping shamelessly. Don't fall for it, Em, she muttered later. Leopards don't change spots. But curiosity, or perhaps lingering love, won. I agreed to meet at a neutral cafe the next day. As I prepared, doubts swirled. Was this a trap? Richard's charm had fooled me before. The cafe was quiet, sunlight filtering through windows like a false promise. Richard arrived first, disheveled in wrinkled clothes, no tie or polish. Samantha trailed behind, her pregnancy showing, eyes downcast. No smugness, now just defeat. Peter and Laura flanked me, my silent guardians. Emma, Richard started, voice hoarse. I'm sorry. I was a fool. Samantha was a mistake. She flinched, but said nothing, twisting a napkin. You built everything, he continued. The house, the money, I took it for granted. Please help us. For the baby. Help them. After they'd discarded me. I studied his face, the man I'd loved for decades, now broken. You threw me out, Richard. Called me old, useless. And you, I turned to Samantha, tore out my roses, redecorated my life. She met my gaze, tears streaming. I thought you were the enemy. He said you didn't care anymore. Lies he'd spun. Anger flared, but pity tempered it. They were human, flawed like me. I cashed out because you left me no choice, I said evenly. The money's mine now. Start over, like I did. Richard's face crumpled. Em, we're drowning in debt. The baby's due, so no home, no stability. Peter interjected. Mom, maybe a loan? For family. But Laura shook her head. No, Peter. They need to learn. The table fell silent, tension thick. Samantha whispered, I'm sorry, Emma. Truly. Her vulnerability cracked something in Metha baby. Innocent, deserved better. But boundaries mattered. I'll pay for a small apartment, prenatal care, I offered. But that's it. No more enabling. Richard nodded, defeated. Thank you. As they left, Samantha lingered. You didn't have to. I smiled faintly. Yes, I did. For me. Walking out, relief washed over not triumph, but release. I'd shown mercy, reclaiming my power without becoming them. Back at Jane's, we debriefed over wine. You're too kind, Em, she said. But that's why you're better. I nodded, the emotional weight lifting. Pain had taught resilience, betrayal, strength, hope, bloom at a future unbound. Weeks turned into months, and the fallout from my decisions rippled through our fractured family like aftershocks from an earthquake. Richard and Samantha moved into the modest apartment I'd funded, a far cry from the sprawling home they'd stolen from me. Mrs. Patel, ever the vigilant neighbor, reported glimpses of their new reality. Richard shuffling to a part-time consulting job, his once impeccable suits now ill-fitting from stress weight loss. Samantha, heavily pregnant, arguing with him on the balcony over bills and broken promises. She's not the queen anymore, Mrs., Patel said over tea one day. Looks like a scared girl. I nodded. But the image haunted me. Had I become the monster in their story? Peter visited often now, our bond mending thread by thread. He'd quit helping Richard, focusing on his own family, and the guilt in his eyes spoke volumes. Mom, I see it now, he confessed one evening, as we walked Jane's garden. Dad's charm was a mask. You were the strength. Laura, ever my fierce ally, organized family dinners at her place, excluding Richard at first. He needs to earn his way back, she insisted. But slowly, tentatively, we included him supervised visits, like probation. Samantha stayed away, her resentment a wall, but the baby loomed, a potential bridge or bomb. The climax came unexpectedly, on a rainy afternoon that matched my turbulent heart. My phone rang. Richard, his voice panicked. Emma, it's Samantha. She's in labor, complications, hospital now. My world tilted. Despite everything, the thought of that innocent child suffering pierced me. I grabbed my keys, calling Laura and Peter on the way. Meet me there. The drive was a blur, memories assaulting me. My own labors, Richard's hand in mine, The joy of holding Peter, then Laura. Now, this. At the hospital, chaos reigned. Richard paced the waiting room, face ashen, mumbling prayers. Peter arrived first, hugging his father awkwardly. Laura followed, shooting Richard a glare before sitting beside me. You didn't have to come, Mom. But I did. Hours dragged. Doctors updating sporadically. Preeclampsia, emergency C-section. Richard collapsed into a chair, tears streaming. This is my fault, Em. All of it. I destroyed us. His confession hung raw, unfiltered by charm. Samantha's screams echoed faintly from down the hall, a soundtrack to his downfall. I could have walked away, left him to stew in his humiliation. But as he broke down sobbing about regrets, how he'd traded gold for fool's gold, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. We'd all been fools. When the doctor emerged, smiling wearily, healthy boy, Mom's stable, relief crashed over us. Richard wept openly, hugging Peter, then turning to me. Thank you for being here. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. In that moment, his empire crumbled completely not from my cash-out, but from facing the fragility of life without his illusions. We saw the baby through the nursery glass, tiny and perfect, wrapped in blue. Samantha, exhausted in her room, met my eyes with a mix of shame and gratitude. Emma, She trailed off, but I understood. He's beautiful, I said softly. Take care of him. Leaving the hospital, rain cleansing the air, I felt the emotional release of tears of triumph, closure, pain purged. I'd watched their world shatter, but in the ruins, seeds of healing sprouted. That night, with Jane, Laura, and Peter gathered, we toasted not to revenge, but resilience. I'd lost much, but gained myself. The darkness of betrayal yielded to hope's light. Months later, as autumn leaves painted the world in gold, I stood in my new homia cozy cottage by the sea, bought with the fruits of my resilience. The waves crashed outside, a soothing rhythm to my healed heart. Richard and Samantha named the baby Ethan, a nod to my father's name, a quiet olive branch. They struggled, but survived, Richard rebuilding humbly, Samantha softening into motherhood. Our interactions were cautious. Family gatherings where old wounds scarred but didn't bleed. Peter and Laura bridged the gaps, their love a balm. Looking back, the betrayal had been a forge, tempering me into someone unbreakable. I'd lost a husband, but gained freedom, endured humiliation, but claimed triumph. At 58, life bloomed anew, painting classes, travels with Jane, laughter without shadows. Karma had delivered justice not in destruction, but in growth. Richard's downfall was his awakening. Mine, a rebirth. Thanks for listening. If this story hit you in the heart, don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.